When millionaire Marcus Williams struck his pregnant wife in the hospital, he thought his money would protect him. He was wrong. Her father, CEO Robert Chin, had more power, more connections, and an unbreakable promise. No one hurts his daughter and gets away with it. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Sarah sat on the white bed, her hand resting on her growing belly. At 7 months pregnant, she should have been glowing with happiness. Instead, her left cheek was red and swollen and tears rolled down her face. "The baby is fine," Dr. Martinez said gently, checking Sarah's chart. "But you need to rest. Stress isn't good for either of you." Sarah nodded but said nothing. How could she explain that her stress came from the man who should have been protecting her? Marcus Williams stood by the window looking out at the city. His expensive suit was wrinkled and his hands were shaking slightly. He had just hit his pregnant wife for the first time, and the reality of what he had done was starting to sink in. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, not turning around. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to what?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "You didn't mean to hit me? Or you didn't mean to get caught?" Marcus finally turned to face her. His face was hard, showing no real remorse. "You were being unreasonable. I'm under a lot of pressure with the business deals. You know how important this merger is." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. Even now he was making excuses. This was the man she had married 3 years ago, thinking he loved her. Marcus Williams, the millionaire businessman, had swept her off her feet with expensive dinners and romantic trips. But slowly she had seen his true nature emerge. The verbal abuse had started small. A harsh word here, a cruel comment there. Then it became constant criticism about everything she did. Today, when she had asked him to come to her doctor's appointment instead of his business meeting, he had exploded in anger. "The baby comes first now, Marcus," she had said. "I need you to be here for us." That's when he had struck her across the face. "Mrs. Williams, is there someone we can call for you?" Dr. Martinez asked, concern clear in her voice. Sarah thought of her father. Robert Chin was one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, running a technology empire worth billions. But more than that, he was her protector, her hero. She hadn't told him about Marcus's abuse because she had hoped things would get better. "Yes," she said finally. "Please call my father." An hour later, Robert Chin burst through the hospital doors like a man on a mission. At 55, he was still tall and strong, with silver hair and eyes that could cut through steel when he was angry. And right now he was furious. He saw his daughter's swollen face and his hands clenched into fists. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. He had left shortly after the doctor's visit, claiming he had important business to attend to. "Sarah, my dear girl," Robert said softly, rushing to her side. "What has that monster done to you?" Sarah broke down completely, telling her father everything. The months of emotional abuse, the isolation from friends and family, the constant fear, and finally today's physical attack. Robert listened to every word, his anger growing with each detail. His daughter, his precious, brilliant daughter, had been suffering in silence while he had been focused on his business empire. "You're coming home with me right now," he said firmly. "And you're never going back to him." "Dad, it's not that simple. I'm married to him. And the baby?" "The baby needs a safe environment," Robert interrupted. "And I'm going to make sure Marcus Williams never hurts you again." Over the next few weeks, Robert threw himself into protecting his daughter. He hired the best lawyers in the country, arranged for round-the-clock security, and moved Sarah into his heavily protected mansion. Marcus, meanwhile, was not taking the separation well. He called constantly, sent flowers, and even showed up at Robert's office building demanding to see his wife. "She belongs with me," Marcus told Robert during one heated phone call. "She's my wife, and that's my child she's carrying." "A man who hits a pregnant woman has no claim to either," Robert replied coldly. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers." But Marcus had lawyers too, and money and connections. He fought back hard, claiming that Sarah was being manipulated by her controlling father. He painted himself as the victim, saying that Robert was trying to steal his wife and child. The legal battle began in earnest. Marcus hired a team of expensive lawyers and started a public relations campaign to damage Robert's reputation. Stories began appearing in business magazines suggesting that Robert Chin was using his power to destroy his son-in-law's business deals out of personal spite. "Let him spread his lies," Robert told his legal team. "The truth will come out in court." Robert's lead lawyer, Jennifer Park, was known for taking on powerful men who abused their wives. She had never lost a domestic violence case and she wasn't planning to start now. "We have the hospital records," she told Robert. "We have witness statements from the medical staff. And most importantly, we have Sarah's testimony. But Marcus will try to discredit everything. Are you prepared for this to get ugly?" "He made it ugly when he hit my pregnant daughter," Robert replied. "I'm prepared for war." The court case began 6 weeks later. The media was everywhere, calling it the trial of the century. On one side was Marcus Williams, the young millionaire businessman with his team of high-powered lawyers. On the other was Robert Chin, the tech mogul fighting for his daughter's safety. Sarah, now 8 months pregnant, took the witness stand and told her story. She spoke clearly and calmly about the months of abuse, the escalating threats, and the day Marcus had hit her in front of the hospital staff. Marcus's lawyers tried to tear her testimony apart. They suggested she was lying to help her father gain custody of the baby. They brought up every argument the couple had ever had, trying to paint Sarah as unstable and vindictive. But the evidence was overwhelming. Hospital staff testified about Sarah's injuries. Friends came forward to speak about the changes they had noticed in Sarah during her marriage, how she had become quiet and withdrawn, how Marcus had gradually isolated her from everyone who cared about her. The turning point came when Marcus took the stand himself. Under cross-examination by Jennifer Park, his mask slipped completely. "Isn't it true, Mr. Williams, that you struck your wife because she asked you to prioritize her medical appointment over a business meeting?" Jennifer asked. "She was being unreasonable," Marcus snapped. "I'm trying to build an empire, and she was whining about some routine checkup." "A routine checkup for your unborn child?" "Look, women get emotional during pregnancy. Sometimes they need to be reminded of what's really important." The courtroom erupted. Even Marcus's own lawyers looked horrified at his words. "And what is really important, Mr. Williams?" Jennifer pressed. "Success, power, building something that matters. Not sitting around holding hands in a doctor's office." It was over. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Marcus with undisguised disgust. But the legal victory was just the beginning of Robert's campaign. He had learned that Marcus's business empire was built on shaky ground. Behind the expensive suits and flashy lifestyle, Marcus was drowning in debt and had been using questionable practices to keep his companies afloat. Robert used every connection he had built over 30 years in business. He called in favors from bankers, investors, and business partners. One by one, Marcus's deals began to fall apart. The merger that Marcus had been so desperate to complete, the one he claimed was more important than his wife's safety, collapsed when Robert's allies pulled their support. Within 3 months, Marcus Williams went from millionaire businessman to a man facing bankruptcy and criminal charges for domestic violence. "You destroyed my life," Marcus screamed at Robert during one of the final court hearings. "No," Robert replied calmly. "You destroyed your own life the moment you raised your hand to my daughter. I simply made sure you faced the consequences." Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl on a sunny Tuesday morning. She named her Hope, because after months of darkness, she finally felt hopeful about the future. Robert held his granddaughter for the first time and felt his heart swell with love and protectiveness. This little girl would grow up knowing that her grandfather would move mountains to keep her safe, just as he had done for her mother. "She's perfect," he whispered to Sarah. "She is," Sarah agreed, watching her father's face light up as he looked at baby Hope. "And she's going to grow up knowing what real love looks like. Not the twisted version that Marcus called love." Marcus, meanwhile, was facing 5 years in prison for domestic violence. His business empire had crumbled completely, and he had lost everything. His lawyers were asking for a plea deal, but Robert made it clear that there would be no mercy. "Some people think I went too far," Robert told Sarah one evening as they sat in his study, baby Hope sleeping peacefully in her grandfather's arms. "They think I used my power and money unfairly." Sarah looked at her father, this man who had dropped everything to protect her when she needed him most. "Dad, you didn't go too far. You went exactly as far as necessary. He hurt me and he would have hurt Hope too eventually. You stopped him." "I failed you first," Robert said quietly. "I was so focused on building my business that I didn't see what was happening to you. I should have noticed the signs earlier." "We both learned something from this," Sarah replied. "I learned that asking for help isn't weak, it's brave. And you learned that success means nothing if the people you love aren't safe and happy." Robert smiled at his daughter, then looked down at his sleeping granddaughter. "Your mother is right, little Hope. Family comes first. Always." 6 months later, Marcus Williams was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay substantial damages to Sarah. His business empire was completely gone, sold off to pay his debts and legal fees. Sarah had started a new life. She worked part-time for her father's company, using her business degree to help run the charitable foundation that Robert had started in Hope's name. The foundation helped women escape abusive relationships and start fresh. "Every woman deserves what I had," Sarah often told the women who came to the foundation for help. "Someone who believes in them and will fight for them. If you don't have that person in your life yet, we'll be that person until you find your strength." Robert, meanwhile, had learned to balance his work with his family. He left the office early 3 days a week to spend time with Sarah and Hope. He had realized that all the money and power in the world meant nothing if you didn't have people to share it with. One evening, as he was reading a bedtime story to Hope, Sarah came into the nursery. "Dad," she said softly, "I never thanked you properly for what you did." Robert looked up from the storybook. "You don't need to thank me. You're my daughter. Protecting you is not something I do for gratitude. It's something I do because I love you." "I know," Sarah said, sitting down beside them. "But I want you to know that you didn't just save me from Marcus. You showed me what real strength looks like. It's not about having power over other people. It's about using whatever power you have to protect the people who can't protect themselves." Robert smiled and pulled his daughter close with his free arm. "That's a lesson I hope little Hope never needs to learn the hard way." As he said this, baby Hope gurgled and reached for her grandfather's face with tiny fingers. Robert kissed her hand gently. "But if she ever does need protection," he continued, "she'll have it. From me, from you, and from everyone who loves her. That's what family means." Outside, the city lights twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Marcus Williams was beginning his prison sentence, finally facing the consequences of his actions. But in this warm, safe room, 3 generations of a family were together, bound by love and protected by the unbreakable promise that they would always stand up for each other. This was justice. Not just the legal kind that happened in courtrooms, but the deeper kind that happened when people who loved each other refused to let evil win. And in the end, love had won. It always did when good people stood up and fought for what was right.